Hey, that thing got a Hemi?
You're about to find out.
Excuse me. Can I have my order, please?
Sweet.
Okay, so we'll move around the front of the car here. Take a look under the hood. This is what we all really want to see. So at the hood here, of course, we've got the flying V on the hood. This was indicating it was a V8 powered car. The gold medallion on the hood on the 54. This was for the Deluxe, indicating it was the Deluxe model. The Deluxe model had the 235 horsepower version of the 331 firepower. So a 54 New Yorker without this has the smaller stick underneath the hood. So speaking of under the hood, let's go take a look. And she's heavy. Oh baby, lift her up. It does have counterbalance springs. That wasn't on every car in 1954. Definitely indication that it was a premium vehicle. First thing that we see, of course, the radiator's not in there. I've got two radiators that were not attached to the car when we picked it up. They are both in what's left of the trunk. First thing that also jumps out at you is the large dual horns here. These are apparently tunable. You can change the frequencies on them slightly, so that'll be interesting to take a look, see if they work. Moving on back a little bit here. First thing on the top is the generator. It is a 6-volt car. I intend to keep it 6 volt. There's not a lot of electrical accessories in this vehicle, so 1955 they started transitioning to 12 volt. But for 54 they were all 6 volt, and they're positive ground as well. So when you hook up the battery, you got to remember on these cars that the ground goes to the positive post on your battery. So voltage come from the generator constant. Alternators, of course, they can vary the output. A generator, it just runs, and it pushes power, of course, to the voltage regulator, which is that black box on the firewall there, and any excess voltage would get shunted out of the system instead of overcharging the battery. So kind of neat. Another thing that's really kind of neat here, right behind it, this reservoir on the top, that's for the power steering. The power steering didn't have its own pulley off the front. So power steering equipped cars, there's a shaft that runs directly through the generator. The power steering pump is mounted behind it. So as the generator turns, it spins the pump for the power steering. 54 Chryslers had full-time power steering, which actually was kind of a rare luxury item. Again, back in 1954, power steering didn't become ubiquitous for many years afterwards, but the Deluxe New Yorker, it did have power steering standard. So above that here, we've got the big air cleaner. It is an oil bath air cleaner. So there's oil would go in the bottom of it, and the air would actually filter in through the oil, and the oil would absorb anything, dust and debris that was in the air. Fluids are great filter material, but they're a little bit hard to suck through. So that's why, eventually all cars went to a paper style replaceable element filter. But the oil air filter, again, air filters, they weren't even standard equipment on a lot of cars in the early days of the automobile. That Chrysler, they had them on. And the oil bath was definitely the state of the art. Looking down, of course, big, massive, wide cylinder head. That's what makes a Hemi. The spark plugs are underneath this cover here. This cap will come off, and the spark plug holes are directly down the center of the cylinder head. So very easy to get to the spark plugs and to perform maintenance on them. When it comes time for me to put some break loose juice down the cylinder holes, it's going to be pretty easy to do. I actually did it on this car in 2021 when I moved it from one storage location to the other. I pulled all the plugs and put some ATF down each of the cylinder bores, but it does still seem to be pretty locked up. All the electrical is down the driver's side firewall. So when we do some cleaning here, we're going to kind of cover that off. The wiring actually looks pretty intact. Insulation and so on looks pretty good, so I think we got pretty lucky there. The battery cables and terminals are big, solid, heavy gauge wire. When you've got 6 volts, you know, it's not necessarily a lack of power, it's kind of the pressure that goes through it. So with 12 volt, you can get by with smaller wires, but you really need a big wire to pump the amperage down at 6 volts. But they both seem to be in good condition, so that's great. Water pump down there. There's an auxiliary cooler on the side here. The fan, of course, is direct drive, not a clutch. Really nothing else that's driven off of the engine, just the generator, power steering assembly, and the water pump. So I have not seen if the water pump is seized yet either, or the generator. This is really our first look underneath here. I'm taking you guys with me as I go here. So I don't know where we're at. I'm going to try to get the belts off first and then see if the generator will spin individually and if the water pump will spin individually. Hopefully they do. Less work down the road for us. Fuel pump. Typical off the snout of the camshaft. Fuel pump is mounted right there. It's a pretty straightforward design that we see. There's no return on it. One inlet from the fuel, one to the carburetor, and that's it. This is your crankcase ventilation, and also where you would add oil to the vehicle. This, of course, would attach to the top of the radiator here. This car has a heater. There's the heater core bolted to the firewall. Heaters were actually optional on cars, so this one does have it, and the heater hose is coming out. Now, there's one thing here that I'm not sure of. I've got to do some research on it. There was a Y clamp put on here. The one comes from the engine, routes up, splits to the heater core, which is in the black box on the firewall there, and then it splits off and comes down here, and there's a hole that's punched into the rad support. It's obviously not factory because it's I'm gonna get you in here to take a look at it. It's looks like it's somebody did it with a punch and put a hole through it, and this bullet line here just terminated out basically at the grill. So I'm not exactly sure what the situation was with that, and I'm going to have to see, maybe what my uncle was thinking back in the day when this was done, because I don't think that's the way it was supposed to be from the factory. So what else have we got back here? Not a whole lot else to report. We 235 horsepower, had dual exhaust, and had a 4-barrel carburetor. So we'll take a look under there in just a second. You'll notice here there's a glass bowl fuel filter that they had back in the day. Some fuel pumps, they had this glass bowl filter on the fuel pump down below, and this one has it up on right at the fuel inlet into the carburetor. So the 331 4-barrel intake manifolds were fairly sought after. They had a really good flow design. So on later engines, if you could find a 4-barrel intake manifold, it was kind of a performance part that you wanted to get your hands on. Okay, so there's the carburetor right there. There's the fuel inlet, the glass bowl, fuel inlet there. And that's kind of stiff. There's the back side of the power steering pump. You see the shaft that comes out of the generator. There's some really neat stuff. Distributor is all there. The coil, all the cap and wires are in place. Primary leader there. The coil's just kind of hanging out here. Oh, what's this? Hey, there's a wiper blade. All right, well, that might come in handy. Maybe not. No trash. I'm gonna save that. Not. Okay. The coil, yeah, the coil's just kind of hanging out. It's interesting. I got a chrome piece sitting here too. Not sure where that came from, so we'll add that to the pile. All right, we added some light to the subject here. Down here, that is where our oil filter canister is. So that canister opens up and there's a filter, replaceable filter element in there. And then right behind it is the dipstick tube for the PowerFlight 2-speed automatic transmission. So that's awesome. Yeah, you know, that's probably about it for under here right now. Oil from the oil belt filter got everywhere when I pulled it out. I was just pulling the lid off it, so see how these engines got so dirty and gross back in the day. All right, so that's introduction to the 331 firepower Hemi, the 235 horsepower in the 1954 Deluxe. So I think that'll wrap this one up. And on the next video, we're gonna clean up this engine bay a little bit. And then we will maybe take a look down some cylinder bores and see what's going on inside. You know, having that air filter on over the carburetor, you know, all this time was definitely good news. I think it stayed relatively clean. So hopefully we didn't get a lot of contamination through the intake. So kind of looking forward to getting the camera inside the cylinder bores and seeing what's going on in there. So, all right, we will see you on the next one, you guys. Thanks for hanging out with me on the 331 firepower.